Imagine lying in a hospital bed, motionless, while everyone believes you are trapped in a coma. But in reality, your eyes are closed only because you're hiding, testing the people around you. Listening silently to every whisper and every confession. What if the nurse who cared for you every single day, the one who wiped your face, changed your sheets, and prayed for you at night, suddenly leaned close and revealed a secret that could shatter your heart or change your life forever? Before we begin this emotional journey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Gentle Words, so you never miss stories that touch your soul and remind you of the hidden miracles in human hearts. The world outside his hospital window kept moving. Cars honked distantly. Nurses walked briskly through sterile white corridors, machines hummed with their monotonous beeps. But inside the room, Jonathan Hale, a billionaire whose name once commanded boardrooms and newspapers, lay perfectly still, his eyes closed, his body feigning the helpless stillness of a coma. Everyone thought he had slipped into unconsciousness after a sudden collapse from stress and overwork, but the truth was something only he knew. He was pretending, testing and hiding, because after a lifetime of wealth, power, and betrayal, Jonathan wanted to see the truth of people without the blinding influence of his money. He had instructed his lawyers and doctors to keep his condition discreet, and most of the world believed he was lingering in a fragile state. But here in this quiet hospital room, only one person came daily with a heart so pure that it made his hidden eyes water, the young nurse Clara, assigned to his care. At first, Jonathan had thought this game of pretending to be in a coma would last only a few days. He expected greed, negligence, or perhaps indifference from hospital staff, but instead, he found something he never anticipated: the gentle rhythm of compassion, the warmth of hands that lingered on his blanket longer than necessary, the soothing voice of a woman who spoke to him even when she thought he couldn't hear. Clara would enter every morning, often humming softly as she adjusted the blinds, bringing in golden rays of sunlight that painted his still body with warmth, and then she would whisper, "Good morning, Mr. Hale, it's another day. I hope you can feel this sunshine even if you can't open your eyes yet." And though his eyes remained closed, deep inside, his heart stirred. For weeks, he listened in silence as Clara shared small pieces of herself, telling him about the flowers she planted in her tiny balcony, about the rain that kept her awake at night, about the loneliness of working double shifts to pay her younger brother's tuition after their parents had passed away. She never expected him to respond, but she spoke as though he were alive inside, and indeed, he was. Each day Jonathan grew more drawn to this quiet soul who treated him not as a lifeless body, not as a billionaire whose name filled headlines, but as a human being deserving of care and dignity. Still, he remained silent, unwilling to reveal the truth, until one night changed everything. It was late, long past visiting hours, when Clara returned to his bedside after her shift. She thought no one would notice, and in the dim light of the room, Jonathan felt her hand slide into his. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered softly, her voice trembling with emotions she could no longer suppress. "But I couldn't leave you alone tonight. Everyone thinks you're just a patient, Mr. Hale, but I've started to see you as something more." Jonathan's heart thundered in his chest, but he forced his body to remain still. Clara leaned closer, her warm breath brushing his ear, and confessed words that shattered his carefully built walls. "I know you can't hear me, but I've fallen in love with you. With the man I see when I take care of you. With the kindness I imagine is behind those closed eyes. It's foolish, isn't it? Falling for someone who doesn't even know I exist." Tears burned at the corners of Jonathan's hidden eyes, but he dared not move. He listened as Clara poured out her heart, telling him how she had prayed for his recovery every night, how she had stayed longer than she should just to make sure he was comfortable, how she had spoken to him because it made her feel less alone in a world that often seemed cruel and unfair. "I don't care if you're rich or poor, awake or asleep," she whispered, pressing her forehead gently to his hand. "All I know is that you've become the most important part of my life, and I don't know how to stop these feelings." And in that moment, Jonathan realized that the love he had sought in 1,000 places, in boardrooms, in fleeting romances, in friendships twisted by money, was here, beside him, in the heart of a woman who believed he could not even hear her. He wanted to open his eyes, to tell her he had heard every word, to cradle her trembling face in his hands, but fear and doubt shackled him. What if she resented him for deceiving her? What if his wealth, once revealed, destroyed the purity of her confession? He lay still, caught between longing and fear, while Clara continued her quiet confession through broken sobs. "If you ever wake up, I hope you'll smile once, just once. So I'll know that I mattered to you." That night, when Clara finally left, her footsteps soft and reluctant, Jonathan knew his game of pretending could not last much longer. For the weight of her love had pierced the armor around his soul. The next morning came with the golden rays of sun creeping through the blinds, and Jonathan's heart raced as he anticipated Clara's return, the sound of her footsteps now as familiar as the ticking of the clock. When she entered, cheerful as ever despite the exhaustion in her eyes, she greeted him with the same gentle words. But he now carried the knowledge of her midnight confession in his chest like a sacred flame, warming and burning at the same time. She adjusted his blanket, checked the IV, and hummed softly, but behind her smile there was a trace of sadness, as though she carried a burden no one else could see. Jonathan longed to open his eyes and tell her he had heard her, that she was not alone, but still he lay frozen in his charade, watching through closed lids the way she lingered at his bedside. Later that day, he overheard two doctors in the hallway discussing his case. They believed his condition was stable but unlikely to change soon, and one even suggested transferring him to long-term care. Clara, standing nearby, had protested quietly, "Please, give him more time, he's not just a case. He matters." The passion in her voice struck Jonathan deeply, and he realized she was fighting for him not only as a nurse, but as someone who truly cared. That evening, she returned once again after her shift, carrying a small journal in her hands. She sat beside him, opened the pages, and began to read aloud, not medical notes but pieces of her own heart. "Dear Mr. Hale," she read softly, "today was hard. My brother's tuition is due, and I don't know how I'll pay it. I'm tired of pretending I'm strong all the time, but when I'm with you, I feel like I can share my weakness without judgment. You don't answer, but somehow it feels like you're listening. Maybe it's crazy, but I imagine your eyes opening and telling me it will all be okay." Jonathan listened, every word embedding itself in his soul, and for the first time in years he felt a purpose beyond wealth or business deals. He wanted to be the man she imagined, the source of comfort and strength she needed. As days passed, Clara's confessions became a ritual, her late-night visits filled with laughter, tears, and unspoken dreams. She told him about the night she nearly gave up nursing because of exhaustion, about how she had no one left to lean on, about the loneliness of living in a city that never noticed her, and always, she returned to him, the silent patient who became her confidant. Jonathan's heart grew restless, torn between the desire to reveal himself and the fear of losing the purity of her love if she discovered his deception. Yet destiny has a way of pushing hearts toward truth. One stormy night, thunder rolling outside, Clara rushed into his room soaked from the rain, her uniform clinging to her, her hair plastered to her face. She clutched a crumpled paper in her trembling hand and sank into the chair beside him. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know how much longer I can do this. They're threatening to expel my brother if I don't pay his tuition by next week. I've sold everything I could, I even considered quitting my job to take another. But I can't leave you." She buried her face into his blanket, her tears seeping through the fabric. Jonathan's chest ached with helplessness. He had the power to solve all her problems with a single call, yet he was trapped by his own pride and fear. At that moment, he made a silent vow: soon, very soon, he would open his eyes and change her life forever. That night, as she cried beside him, she whispered another confession, so raw it shook him to his core. "If you never wake up, I think a part of me will die with you, because I've given you pieces of myself I never gave anyone else." Her words pierced through his soul like lightning, and tears leaked from the corners of his closed eyes, unnoticed by her as she finally fell asleep in the chair, her hand still clutching his. He wanted to move, to speak, to comfort her, but still, fear held him bound, fear that she might feel betrayed, fear that his wealth would stand between them. Yet in the silence of the night, as the storm raged outside, Jonathan realized that love unspoken was a love wasted, and he could not bear to waste this gift any longer.